Hi, everybody. My name is Ricky Barger, and I'm a real alcoholic. We are on page 113, last paragraph on the page. 2 wives. We've changed the title of this chapter to relationships because it ain't all about wives anymore. There's a few of us women that happen to qualify for the program. So let's hear what Bill got to say about the fourth classification. If I remember how to work this thing.
You would suppose that men in the fourth classification would be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody had given them up. Defeat seemed certain. Yet often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. Sometimes there are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. His reaction may be one of enthusiasm.
There is something that we need to know about AA in the beginning. Back in the late 30s, early 40s, that when people were coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, these were low-bottom drunks. They were people that had been very successful, but because of their drinking, had lost everything. And Bill and Bob thought, okay, take the booze away and then they'll go back being successful again. Well, that might have been very true, but there was a little problem going on. There was a depression going on right then. Money was funny. So the people that was coming to Alcoholics Anonymous were very low-bottom alcoholics. They had lost everything. And because of our forefathers, our bottom has been raised. We do not have to lose everything today. Today, you can come to Alcoholics Anonymous and you can have a job. You can have a home. You can have 2 cars in the driveway. You do not have to lose everything. Thank God for our forefathers. They did that for us. So our forefathers has raised our bottoms. Now, of course, if you want to lose everything, you can. Yeah, and maybe you'll live. And if you live, we'll get you. That's just the name of that tune. If you live, we'll get you. But today it's a little bit dangerous to try riding that elevator to the bottom. There's too many things out there that kills alcoholics. Not just the booze. There's just too many things going on out there. This is a very dangerous world we're living in today. And alcoholics seems to be getting the brunt of it. People don't mess around with drug addicts because they know they carry guns. And you know it's the alcoholic that takes a knife to a gunfight. You know, we know that. But it's the alcoholic that takes the brunt of it all. So we're in control of the buttons. We can stop that elevator anytime we want to get off. But we have to know the dangers involved. So many times an alcoholic thinks, well, I'll go out for just one more hurrah. Maybe there's one more giggle in that bottle for me. And they go out, and maybe they smoke a little joint, and that joint got fentanyl in it, and they die. And that's what happens to alcoholics. It's sad. Very, very hideous deaths. Now they come home and they're asleep, they're smoking a cigarette, and they pass out on the couch and they burn their house down and they burn themselves up. You know, they fall asleep at the wheel and they wreck their car. Alcoholics die hideous, hideous deaths. And they don't say on their death certificate they died of alcoholism. You know, they call it something else. They call it pancreatitis. They call it cirrhosis of the liver. But it's alcoholism, folks. Okay, I'm done preaching. I haven't been here for a while. I gotta get it out.
If he is already committed to an institution, but can convince you and your doctor that he means business, give him a chance to try our method, unless the doctor thinks his mental condition too abnormal or dangerous. We make this recommendation with some confidence. For years, we have been working with alcoholics committed to institutions. Since this book was first published, AA has released thousands of alcoholics from asylums and hospitals of every kind. The majority have never returned. The power of God goes deep. You may have the reverse situation on your hands. Perhaps you have a husband who is at large, but who should be committed. Some men cannot or will not get over alcoholism. When they become too dangerous, we think the kind thing is to lock them up. But of course, a good doctor should always be consulted. The wives and children of such men suffer horribly, but not more than the men themselves. But sometimes you must start life anew. We know women who have done it. If such women adopt a spiritual way of life, their road will be smoother. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry over what other people are thinking, and you hate to meet your friends. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You avoid the subject of drinking, even with your own parents. You do not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented. We find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know the nature of his illness. But you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. When you have carefully explained to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. He may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially. The same principle applies in dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension which grips the home of every problem drinker will be lessened. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he was sick, when as a matter of fact he was tight. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can. Whenever possible, let your husband explain. Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he is doing. Discuss this with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again. But be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so. There is another paralyzing fear. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and hard times which will befall you and the children. This experience may come to you, or you may already have had it several times. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever. And now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to us, for it opened up a path which led to the discovery of God. We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. We wives found that, like everybody else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person. And we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought, on the whole, we were pretty good women, capable of being nicer, if our husbands stopped drinking. But it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as the radically changed attitude toward him which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can. If you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy. But all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in a new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be. The faith and sincerity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable, and you will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband whenever there is an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit. You and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention. Your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. He wants to make good. Yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords.
So now we have some watchwords: patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Now that paragraph before saying that, to say to your spouse, "This is getting too serious, dear." So let's talk about this. That ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. When there is a disagreement going on, emotions are running. And they are going as, "I'm going to get you before you get me." And the best thing that you can do is get out of the situation before you say something that you shouldn't say. Break it up. One of you, get away from each other. Then whenever things calm down, maybe you can get back together, and when you got your emotions under control. But when you've got your emotions running on full blast, get the hell away from each other. Because if you got emotions running and their emotions, you ain't hearing a damn word each other are saying. So there's no need for communication. Get the hell away from each other. Because staying together is trouble. There's gonna be trouble. So just get away until the emotions get calmed down. And then, go for a drive, go for the car, go to the bedroom, lock the door, go for a car ride, go for a walk, get out of the house. Get the hell away from each other. Get the emotions under control. Don't stay together or something bad going to happen. Something going to come out of your mouth, and that's a problem with words. Once they come out of your mouth, you can't suck them back in. You just can't do that. And we say things that we don't want to say, and then what can you do? Say, "I'm sorry." Delete. Don't work. So just get away so you don't do that. Okay? But here's these: patience, tolerance, understanding, and love. Watchwords. And then down here, we're going to get a rule. Live and let live. And that's for everything. Live and let live. Just because you ain't living the way I'm living don't mean you're living wrong. It just means you're living different. And when things are different, there ain't no right or wrong. It's just different.
Show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. Live and let live is the rule. If you both show a willingness to remedy your own defects, there will be little need to criticize each other. We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we would like our husbands to be. It is the most natural thing in the world, once his liquor problem is solved, to feel that he will now measure up to that cherished vision. The chances are He will not, for, like yourself, he is just beginning his development. Be patient. Another feeling we are very likely to entertain is one of resentment that love and loyalty could not cure our husbands of alcoholism. We do not like the thought that the contents of a book or the work of another alcoholic has accomplished in a few weeks that for which we struggle for years. At such moments, we forget that alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have had any power. Your husband will be the first to say it was your devotion and care which brought him to the point where he could have a spiritual experience. Without you, he would have gone to pieces long ago. When resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings. After all, your family is reunited. Alcohol is no longer a problem, and you and your husband are working together toward an undreamed of future. Still another difficulty is that you may become jealous of the attention he bestows on other people, especially alcoholics. You have been starving for his companionship, yet he spends long hours helping other men and their families. You feel he should now be yours. The fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. Sometimes he will be so interested that he becomes really neglectful. Your house is filled with strangers. You may not like some of them. He gets stirred up about their troubles, but not at all about yours. It will do little good if you point that out and urge more attention for yourself. We find it a real mistake to dampen his enthusiasm for alcoholic work. You should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can. We suggest that you direct some of your thought to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. They need the counsel and love of a woman who has gone through what you have. It is probably true that you and your husband have been living too much alone, for drinking many times isolates the wife of an alcoholic. Therefore, you probably need fresh interests and a great cause to live for as much as your husband. If you cooperate, rather than complain, you will find that his excess enthusiasm will tone down. Both of you will awaken to a new sense of responsibility for others. You, as well as your husband, ought to think of what you can put into life instead of how much you can take out. Inevitably, your lives will be fuller for doing so. You will lose the old life to find one much better. Perhaps your husband will make a fair start on the new basis, but just as things are going beautifully, he dismays you by coming home drunk. If you are satisfied he really wants to get over drinking, you need not be alarmed. Though it is infinitely better that he have no relapse at all, as has been true with many of our men, it is by no means a bad thing in some cases. Your husband will see at once that he must redouble his spiritual activities if he expects to survive. You need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. He will know of it. Cheer him up and ask him how you can be still more helpful. The slightest sign of fear or intolerance may lessen your husband's chance of recovery. In a weak moment, he may take your dislike of his high-stepping friends as one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink. We never tried to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation. The slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or his affairs so he will not be tempted will be noticed. Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. This is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he has not. If not, it had better be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals. If a repetition is to be prevented, place the problem, along with everything else, in God's hands. We realize that we have been giving you much direction and advice. We may have seemed to lecture. If that is so, we are sorry, for we ourselves don't always care for people who lecture us. But what we have related is based upon experience, some of it painful. We had to learn these things the hard way. That is why we are anxious that you understand and that you avoid these unnecessary difficulties. Footnote: the Fellowship of Al-Anon Family Groups was formed about 13 years after this chapter was written. Though it is entirely separate from Alcoholics Anonymous, it uses the general principles of the AA program as a guide for husbands, wives, relatives, friends, and others close to alcoholics. The foregoing pages, though addressed only to wives, indicate the problems such people may face. Alateen, for teenage children of alcoholics, is a part of Al-Anon. So to you out there who may soon be with us, we say, good luck and God bless you.
Okay, so that is the end of the chapter 2 wives. Now, he did make a footnote here to tell you that some 13 years after this book was written, that Lois took it upon herself and out of a resentment. I don't know if I'm sure that John told you about this last week, that whenever Bill was trying to find somebody to write the chapter 2 wives, he asked a couple people, but he never asked Lois. He never asked his own wife. So some 13 years later, out of probably a resentment that Lois had, she formed Al-Anon, which is a program for people that are suffering from alcoholism that don't drink. And what the fact of the matter is that the Al-Anons usually get sicker than the alcoholic. And they don't get well real fast. The alcoholic, when he quits drinking, his body starts to heal. And he starts getting better. Now, what has to happen for the Al-Anon? For the Al-Anon to start getting better. She wasn't drinking to begin with. But yet she was going through the same kind of misery that the alcoholic was. So her recovery is not fast. So since then, we have some other groups. And since Alcoholics Anonymous has been founded, we have some 525 anonymous groups that uses the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that is a number that I got a long time ago. 525 groups that uses our 12 steps. But for the Al-Anons and those people that suffer from alcoholism that don't drink, we have adult children of alcoholics, Parents Anonymous, CODA, Al-Anon and Alateen, Families Anonymous, and Tough Love. And I'm sure there are more. What the thing of it is that you have to find something in your area that pertains to whatever. And the best place to find that out is getting a hold of your inner group. The Youngstown area inner group, Akron inner group, Cleveland inner group. These inner groups should have lists of what other kind of anonymous programs they have going on in their area, or where they may be. If you got a gambling problem, call AA. They'll tell you where the GA meeting's at, or they should. But if they don't, maybe they got a telephone number. But your hub of information is going to be your inner groups. And that's where you're going to find out that information. Okay, it is a little bit early, but I hate to start a new chapter. But the family afterwards is our next chapter, chapter 9. And this is talking about alcoholism as a family disease. And what the fact of the matter is that when there is an alcoholic in the family, the whole family gets sick. The whole family gets sick. The kids get sick. The spouse gets sick. And whoever's close, if the parents are there, they get sick. It's contagious, just like the flu. It's sad, but it is a family disease. And the whole family has to get well. And this is because the family has to know what the alcoholic has to go through in order to get well. The alcoholic has to, once the alcoholic gets sober, he got to come to these meetings. He's got to get a sponsor. He got to get a home group. He got to work with other alcoholics. He's going to get spiritual. There's a lot of things that the family needs to know that the alcoholic is going to have to go through. And they should go through it with him. If not by herself. But, this is it's a family disease, and it's just so wonderful if the family gets well at the same time. But sometimes that don't happen. And it's the way it is. But it's in this chapter that you're going to see the word disease used for the only time. Now, we know today, in 1957, the American Medical Association recognized alcoholism as a disease. Up until that point, nobody could refer to alcoholism as a disease. Because according to the AMA, it was not a disease. So in this book, throughout this book, we've referred to alcoholism as a sickness, as an illness, as a malady. But we are not going to call it a disease. But here on page 122, you are going to, oh, no. Wrong. This is going to happen later on. This is where you're going to see the word recovering. This is the only place in the book you're going to see recovering used. And this is in reference to a period of convalescing. I am a recovered alcoholic. And according to Clarence Snyder, which was one of our first 100, he defined a recovered alcoholic as a man or woman who had not drank and worked the first 9 steps. And if you have not drank and worked the first 9 steps, you are a recovered alcoholic. Now, I'm not going toe-to-toe with anybody. You want to be a recovering alcoholic, go ahead. You know, there's people that sober 50 years that want to be grateful, recovering alcoholics. But this is the only place that you're going to see the word recovering. As a matter of fact, if you go on our title page, you will see that the title of this book is Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. So, this is the only place you're going to see recovering. But we're going to talk about recovering in this chapter, that period of convalescing. Now, when I got sober, they called it the sickness of getting well. Yeah. Because when I got sober, oh my God, that was the worst thing in the world. It was a terrible thing. I felt terrible. I acted terrible. I was depressed. It was terrible. And they explain it as it starts some 7 months after you recover, after you get off that pink cloud. You actually do get into a fit of depression. And you sort of start thinking, you know, if this is what life is like sober, you know, maybe cashing it in might be a good idea. That's not a good, healthy thought. And that's what the sickness of getting well will get you. But we're going to get into that when we get into this chapter. So with no more from me, I'm going to turn it back over